there, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if it is your first time here. My name is Erin and I make videos about sewing. If you are new here and you enjoy this video, I hope you consider subscribing before you leave the video today. Today's video is about my experience making my own period underwear. Now I'm going to refer to them as period underwear, but they're absorbent underwear, so they can be used for periods or postpartum or any incontinence and leaking issues, anything like that, where you want just some absorbency in your underwear. This is going to be a pretty lengthy video, so I will have chapters linked down below. The sections I'm going to go through are an introduction, where I kind of explain my background with period underwear and why I wanted to make my own. I'll show you the ready-to-wear ones that I really like and then explain why I wanted to do this myself. And then I'll talk about the two patterns I used, the fabrics I used, and where I sourced them from, which was my biggest hurdle in making these initially. And then I will do a cost breakdown and a conclusion telling you whether I think it was worth it or not. I started using period underwear about 2 years ago after I had my daughter. My menstrual cups weren't working anymore, and troubleshooting menstrual cups can get quite expensive. So I decided to shift gears and try something different, but I do try not to use disposable feminine hygiene products, just, to do my little part to help the earth stick around longer. And another reusable option was either reusable pads or period underwear. I don't like pads, disposable ones, so I didn't think I was gonna like reusable ones. I decided to try out some underwear. The first pair I bought was from a company called Thinx. This was a line that they had going at Target, so they were pretty inexpensive. I think they were like $12. And they are going in the trash immediately after this, mostly because I bought too small of a size. So the small size combined with the fact that they are bound makes them very, very uncomfortable along the whole leg, basically. But I've clearly hung on to them because I needed them in rotation. After that, once I knew I liked the idea but did not like that specific pair, I ordered a pack from a company called Knix. So that was Thinx, and then I ordered from Knix, Knix, and I really like these. It was a multi-pack of different absorbency levels. I tend to need heavy absorbency or high absorbency for a day or two, then medium for a day or two, and then light for a day or two. But the first 2 nights and the first 2 days, I tend to want pretty high absorbency. Had these boy shorts, and then 2 medium pairs and 2 light pairs that are just like a regular brief. What I really like about these is that they have this almost like seamless design to them. They're a lot like the regular underwear I wear the rest of the month, which are generally just like the laser cut, no-show panty type thing. These are all like heat sealed or heat seamed. I don't know how to explain it, but I think you guys know what I mean. They use bar tacks in a couple of areas to reinforce like high stress joints, but for the most part, it is all just sewn together, put together with heat. Even these edges are just turned over, and they do it with heat. They have special machines that do it. I knew I was not going to be able to recreate these because I don't have that technology available in my house, but I needed more than those 6 pairs, including the one that really doesn't fit. Because I was finding, especially with needing higher absorbency on the first 2 days, that this poor pair would like come off and immediately go in the wash, and I would immediately have to do wash that day and get them ready to go that day because I like wanted them and needed them. I wanted to make my own period underwear to kind of fill in that gap. These are now my like going out of the house underwear because they do have this more seamless design. They're not bulky. The absorbency is really good without it feeling really bulky in between my legs, but I don't want to have to wash those a bunch. And I figured they would be more expensive than making my own. So I decided to just make a couple pairs so that I could fill those gaps and at home be able to wear the pairs I made and overnight and everything like that, and not have to rush to wash my ready to wear ones and to make sure those were always ready when I needed to leave the house. I used 2 patterns when I was making my period underwear. I have a bunch of notes down here that I'll be referencing, so that is why I now have this beautiful underlighting. I used the Petite Stitchery Linden Sleep Bra and Knickers. They go from an extra small to a 1X, and that corresponds to a 34.5 inch hip to a 61.25 inch hip. They have some options for the absorbency. You can do a partial absorbency panel or a full absorbency panel. What they mean by this is how high up your bottom it goes, essentially. And when I show you the pairs I made, I'll show you the difference. You can do knit bands or you can do elastic, and they have to be, I want to say color blocked because that's kind of how they market it, is that they will be color blocked. But the way the panel works, you will have seams up your bum. So this is the back side, this is the front, that's that whole panel. And the pattern pieces for the absorbent layers fit this section, and then you add the sides after you've constructed the middle and put all your absorbent layers in. So you have to have these seams up the booty. Now, if you're wearing them under jeans or something like that, probably not a huge deal, but as I mentioned when I was talking about these and the regular underwear I like to wear, I don't want seams. There are high, mid, or low rise options, but you do have to do the brief. Within the pattern, if you are not doing the brief, there's a thong and a bikini cut option, but for this you have to do the brief, which makes sense. There is good fit information in the pattern, both adjusting pattern pieces and then a couple of notes about how to adjust things after. But it's good information if you're new to sewing these types of garments or if you are new to garment sewing in general. What I love about this pattern, the one thing that I truly love about this pattern, is that there is a really good info sheet about what to choose for the different layers, the specialty layers that you need. So your wicking layer, your absorbent layer, your waterproof layer, it gives you different options and very broadly, but searchable terms that you can find on websites, which is what I wanted and needed. So this info sheet is actually what pushed me over the edge and got me to just order the fabric and give it a go. I will say it is difficult for me to understand all of the options available. I have found this with some other petite stitchery patterns also, is that I just have trouble kind of decoding what all of the options are until I kind of get to the pattern piece section. And when I'm printing out the pattern pieces or putting them together and trying to figure out what I actually need, that's kind of when I start to understand the options. But I don't see that clearly when they have the page that shows you the different things you can make. It is not all encompassing. And then there's not a page that says okay, choose between these rise options, choose between these cut options. Note, if you're making absorbent underwear, you cannot use these, It's just not very clear in my opinion. It was also difficult for me to understand different parts of the prep sheets where it's telling you about things and then the instructions themselves. I think how the instructions for petite stitchery patterns are written just does not jive with my brain. I think I've made 4 of their patterns and there's a lot of words, not in the instructions necessarily, but in all of the prep pages where you're kind of picking your views and stuff like that. There's just a lot of words and their font choices are just not it for me. I need Times New Roman, Arial, maybe Helvetica, okay? I do not need this curly, swirly font that I have to decode to figure out what it's saying. Not it for me. So I really just think Petite Stitchery is not the pattern company for me, and that's okay. They might be the pattern company for you, but I'm not recommending this pattern in general. For example, there's no clear delineation within the instruction steps of when you're moving on to something different or when they're switching to a different view. So it has all the steps for putting your regular underwear together up to the point of adding the bands. Then it says the color block option, not absorbent, just regular color blocked option. So having those panels instead of just a front and a back up until adding your bands. Then it talks about how to sandwich the full panel layers. Then how to do the layers for the partial panel. Then how to attach the side panels to the center panel for the absorbent underwear, but we already talked about it for the color blocked underwear. And then it goes to the bands without anything saying okay, now proceed to step 13, right? So, okay, you put your underwear, your regular underwear all the way together. Now skip ahead to step 13. Oh, look, you put together your full absorbency panel. Now skip to step 10 to attach the sides and to step 13 to do the bands. is convoluted, or it's just not very clear. There are some headings within the instructions saying like, these are the instructions to put together your partial absorbency panel, but they're inconsistent. Like, they are not at the beginning of every section I think they should be at. So for the drafting itself, it is good. Everything went together fine, except the absorbent layers are cut smaller. Now this makes sense because you want to reduce bulk in the seam allowance, but I think they're maybe too small because I had a lot of trouble catching them in the seams for all of the seams. Like, I could catch them just a little bit in one and then they would not even be close to the other one. This could also be due to different stretch percentages across the fabrics, but it was an issue because if I didn't catch it in the seam allowance, as soon as I tried them on, where that layer was loose, if enough of it was not caught in the seam allowance, it just like crumpled. And it's between two layers. So I was like trying to smooth it out without actually being able to manipulate it directly. I didn't love that about the absorbent layers. I think it makes sense for them to be a little bit smaller, but I think they might be a little too small. I will show you the pairs I made. Now I made 4 pairs of them. I made them at a point when I just needed to sew something. Okay, so the quality is like pretty low, but I just needed to sew something and do something with my hands, and I didn't care about the result, but they are very functional. So yay for that. Like I said, I did the full absorbency panel and I did the partial absorbency panel. So here's the partial absorbency panel. It goes up to here. So there's a line of stitching there where it catches, and then they go to the front spot. It's the same for all of them, I want to say. We'll check in a second. So that's the front, and then goes to the back. Where this line of stitching falls is like just below the top of my butt crack. So when I put them on, it feels like too breezy on my butt crack, and I feel like my butt crack is hanging out. I know it's not because these come up really high, but it's just a very uncomfortable feeling at first until my body heat like warms the underwear up and everything feels the same. Just a note, if you make the partial absorbency panel, which I do recommend because I don't think the full absorbency panel is necessary. I run into this with both the pair, like all of the pairs I made and my ready to wear pairs. I hit the outer limits before I start hitting the front or the back limits in terms of absorbency or absorbent necessity. I max out and need to change them because the side seams are getting dirty prior to the front or the back remotely having any blood. So even this is higher than necessary, and I think you could really take it down a lot more because all of this bulk right across your booty and then this line of stitching is just not it in terms of comfort for my bum. Personally, the full absorbency panel is kind of exactly what it says. It goes all the way to the top of the back. There is a line of stitching there, and that is an example of where the absorbent layers were not quite caught in the seam allowance and came down. So I had to like squish them up, and then I sewed just a zigzag right across there to hold them in place. It does go all the way to the front. So it is absorbent from here all the way down through here. I do not need that much absorbency to the front and the back. If there was a way to make it wider to the sides without it being an issue, that's what I would need, because wicking fabric does not like wick it in a certain direction. Maybe if you added channels, it would help it run. If you like stitch some channels, it would help it run up like to the front and the back. But in general, wicking fabric just helps distribute it so it can dry faster. At least that's what it does for sweat. For this, it just helps distribute it so it can be pulled into the absorbent fabric faster. It's not directing it a certain way. Those are my Linden underwear. I don't like the 2 seams up the back. I don't like how high the partial absorbency layer goes. I don't like how high the full absorbency layer goes. I just don't really like them. One other thing I don't like, that is my fault, is that I used the same fabric for the knit bands, and it's a cotton lycra jersey, so these just like are not tight enough. I think I need to take them off and do some fold over elastic. If I wear them under like pajama shorts and stuff like that, it's fine. It's only if I'm trying to wear them under like a nightgown, which this is, that I start to feel like they are falling down. They are functional. They'll work probably for a long time, and that's fine. I don't recommend the pattern for the reasons I have discussed. The drafting is fine except for those absorbent panels. And I just don't think it's worth $9.50 when there is a free option available. Now let me talk about that free option. I used the Seamwork Flo undies. They run from a 00 to a 26 with overlapping sizes between 12 and 16. In the instructions, it does explain the drafting difference. There's a cup difference and a height difference. It does also seem like they maybe draft for a curvier body based on the body measurements. On like the bottom half also, not just the cup size. Those body measurements are all in there. This corresponds to a 34-inch to 58-inch hip. There are only 6 pages to print, which is really nice. There is only one view. It's described as navel grazing mid-rise fit and average coverage at the back, which I would agree with. And you finish it with a fold over elastic. Now I do think you could do enclosed elastic kind of like with a swimsuit, or you could do knit bands. You would just kind of have to think about how that plays into the hem allowance. There are no seams across the booty. There's just a front and a back, and I love that. The pattern mentions using Zorb, Z-O-R-B, like absorb, but with a Z, as your absorbent layer. It mentions it, and then in the accompanying blog post, they talk about it more, and it kind of felt like the only thing I could use. So even though I had downloaded this pattern 2 years ago, I didn't get around to using it until now, after the Petite Stitchery info sheet kind of opened up my eyes to the fact that, like, bro, you can use anything, basically. I had read this blog post a long time ago where it talked about Zorb, which is highly absorbent and thin, so ideal for this situation. And then I'd heard of people using like leftover fleece scraps or flannel and stuff like that as an absorbent layer. So I knew there was a very wide spectrum, but I did not know where in that I needed to land and what I needed to buy. So I will say that was a bit of a turnoff when I first looked into making these years ago, is that it felt like I had to find Zorb. With only one view, the instructions are really clear and easy to follow. I do think Seamwork instructions are generally pretty good anyway. I think this is the second pattern of theirs I've sewn, and I have never had issues following the instructions. So let me show you my pair. I forgot to mention, I have these lovely brown colors because a couple of months ago, I decided I was gonna make my husband some work shirts because he got one that just fit terribly. And I, was just like, I will make him better ones. Neither of the colors worked. They did not match what he has to wear. And then I just had these not great colors laying around. So they worked out perfectly for this project. For this, I used a remnant of an athletic brushed poly that I had gotten from Surge Fabrics and made an athletic shirt out of. I had enough to make 2 pairs of these underwear. So it's nice and soft and probably kind of moisture wicking. And yeah, so there's the front and the back, and the absorbent panel is just this. So a lot more similar in size to this is my medium absorbency ready to wear one. Maybe not quite as large in terms of front to back. Oh yeah, not quite as large, but a little bit wider. So that's nice. And really you probably could extend this out. You'd have to change the front and back pieces also, but you could probably figure out if you really needed it to be longer. Like I mentioned, picking the fabrics was initially my big sticking point, but when I read that Linden information sheet, I decided to just Google some of those terms, see what I could find. I wanted to order all from one site, was also a big thing for me to not pay multiple shipping fees. I wanted to order from one site, and I thankfully found naturesfabrics.com. I'll talk a little bit more about them in a second, but I do want to talk about Zorb. It is not super expensive. It's about $18 a yard for the original microbial version. It does have silver in it, which means it's microbial, which is really, really great because you are dealing with bodily stuff here. And especially if you are not in a situation where you can do your laundry regularly and these are gonna sit a bit, you definitely want something like that. They have newer, different kinds that have all kinds of different wicking properties, and they even have a type that has a waterproof layer included with it, so that would save you having to buy a separate waterproof layer, but it's not super widely available. It's not like on a ton of websites that you can order everything from. So I kind of gave up on that. I think if I made these again in the future, which I potentially may, spoiler alert, I think I would look a little more into buying Zorb. So if you can locate it, or if you don't mind paying separate shipping fees, I do think it's worth looking into. However, I was not willing to do that. So I found naturesfabrics.com. It has a great selection. They do a lot of like cloth diapering, or at least have a lot of offerings for that. But then they also have a lot for making reusable feminine hygiene products, and then just a lot of fabrics in general. They are, as they sound, like naturally based. They try to do things in a very eco-conscious way. And then when they sell things that are not natural fibers, they're very clear about it. For example, the PUL that I'm gonna talk about that I used as the waterproof layer, they're like, yes, we know this is not natural, but it lasts for a really long time, so it's worth it. Things like that. They have really good prices. They have deals, I think every day. I think they do a deal of the day. They run pretty regular sales that are decent, so it's super, super affordable, and their shipping was not outrageous. If you can look at their website, or if you can order from them, really, really highly recommend them. The two easiest layers to decide on were the waterproof layer and the wicking layer. So the top and the bottom, or the bottom and the top, technically. For the waterproof layer, I used a 1 mil PUL, which stands for like polyurethane laminate or something like that. It's waterproof. It's what a ton of waterproof stuff is made out of. If you have any sort of like wet bags or something like that, it's PUL. So that was a super easy decision to make. It's very, very thin. I don't have it exposed on any of my underwear, but you can buy ones that are super cute, or you can buy it in a million different colors, and you can leave it exposed if you want to. There's no reason to have to cover it up. For the wicking layer, I used an athletic moisture wicking jersey that they had available, and I chose to buy it in black. For the absorbent layers, there are so many options, and on their site, in the descriptions, they will say like ideal for, they call them mama pads or something like that, ideal for mama pads and diapers and stuff like that. They have a ton of fabrics for absorbent layers, and I kind of just made myself choose two options. I went with a medium feeling absorbency one and then a higher absorbency one. And the two layers I chose were a black cotton velour that was 220 GSM and then a 500 GSM bamboo fleece. And I went with them, and they have worked just fine. I've had no issues. They're not super thin. The velour was actually pretty thin. The bamboo fleece, being a higher GSM, obviously a little more dense, and it was thicker, but they both work fine. I don't find them uncomfortable at all, and I've had no issues washing them. I've gone through 4 cycles now, and I've had no issues with anything. Now we have made it to what I think is the most exciting section. It is my cost breakdown. I went back, checked all of my receipts, and I am going based off of what I paid for these things. I got pretty much everything on sale. I'm a very sale-oriented person, and I will tell you what I paid, the total, and then we'll break it down by per pair. For the patterns, I paid $5 for the Linden pattern, and then the Flo was free. The specialty fabric I used from naturesfabric.com was $47.69, including shipping. The knitfabric.com cotton jersey for the Linden pairs was about $20. It was $8 a yard. And I bought it with a couple other things, so I, split the shipping in there. We'll just say about $20. The silver athletic brushed poly was $12.32 for 1 yard, but I used remnants from a previous project, so I'm not actually gonna count that at all. The only notion I had to specifically buy for this was the fold over elastic. I paid $9.89. I do have a lot left over. I actually have a lot left over of everything, so I sent all of the remaining specialty fabrics to my friend who's gonna be using them to make some for charity. If we take the totals and divide everything between the 6 pairs I made, it is $13.76 per pair if I don't account for the fact that I did not use all of the fabric, not even close. However, because I've been tracking my usage this year, I was able to break it down by how much of each fabric I actually used. I sent all of my remaining fabric to my friend, but if I had kept it and used it to make more pairs in the future, obviously I would have used it for something. So if we actually account for what was used, it is $4.72 per pair of Linden underwear, and it's probably pretty similar for the Flo. I didn't actually track how much I used for the absorbent layers on these because it is literally just this much. Like, how much of a yard is that? It's nothing. And with those being so small, and then with the remnant being a remnant, negligible. Probably the same, less than $5. For my ready-to-wear underwear, my knits that I really, really like, I paid $119.85, including shipping, in 2023. So it's probably doubled by now. That's $23.97 on average per pair, but I think I got them on a really good sale because when I went back and looked at the website, one pair of Dream Shorts, which are these like good overnight ones, $48. So yes, it is massively less expensive. Now, when these wear out, I'm gonna replace them with the same product because they're maybe not these, because now I have overnight ones, but you know, my nice going out period underwear, I will repurchase them. I don't have this technology. I can't recreate this. But for $20 less per pair to fill the gap with these homemade ones, I'm all about it, you guys. Very, very worth it. I passed along those specialty fabrics because I don't think I'll need to make more pairs anytime soon, and I won't need to replace them anytime soon. Like I said previously, I will probably look into using Zorb next time in a couple years when I have to replace them. But these NYX ones I've had for 2 years, I have washed them on high heat because, you know, hygiene and sanitation. And I dried them on high heat because I couldn't be bothered to pull them out. And they're still holding up really, really well. I think it'll be the same for the pairs I made. I think they're gonna hold up really well. I didn't wanna keep that fabric on hand for probably years just to use a small fraction of it again when it could go to charity now and free up some space in my sewing room. So yeah, in conclusion, totally worth it. Weren't difficult to put together really, except for some of those absorbent layer issues with the Lindens. I don't recommend the Lindens. I probably will not use that pattern again. In the future when I make them, I will probably just use the Seamwork Flo, and I might try to lengthen out the absorbency of that gusset if I need to, make some like more overnight pairs. What did you guys think? Did you expect it to be more or less expensive for me to make my own period underwear? If you did expect it to be less expensive for me to make it myself, did you expect it to be that much less expensive? Because I figured it was less expensive. I did not think it would be that drastically less expensive. Let me know in the comments down below if you have ever done a project like this or if you are interested in doing a project like this now. That does it for today's video, you guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please hit that like button on the way out. And if you are not already a subscriber, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, please. I will see you down in the comments. Bye.